Well, hi everybody. Again, welcome. Happy Emergency Preparedness Week. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to talk all about animal preparedness with you. My name is Rachel Sheeler, and I work on the Prepared BC team at the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Prepared BC is British Columbia's emergency preparedness education program. We have preparedness guides and resources to help you get prepared for any type of emergency. This year, the theme for Emergency Preparedness Week is In It Together. So we have a webinar series running all week, highlighting how when it comes to an emergency, it's not just about what supplies we have, but also the people around us and how we can work together. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking all about animal preparedness. I'm thrilled to have Cheryl Rogers with us from the Canadian Disaster Animal Response Team here. She has years of experience and has kindly joined us to share her expertise as we talk about the power of planning ahead. And thank you for continuing to type in the chat. This is awesome. My colleague Anna is also here to help with tech support. So you may see her interacting with you in the chat as well. There will be lots of time at the end of the presentation for questions, but feel free to type in the chat your questions so you don't forget. The webinar is recorded and will be shared on the Prepared BC YouTube channel in the next week. So today I'm grateful to be joining from the unceded lands of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam. I urge you to take the time to reflect on and acknowledge the lands that you are joining us from today as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cheryl to introduce herself and give her own land acknowledgement and get us started on the animal preparedness conversation. Over to you, Cheryl.
Hey, thank you, Rachel. There we go. Yes, my name, as Rachel said, Cheryl Rogers. I am one of the founders and I'm a coordinator with the CDART, Canadian Disaster Animal Response Team. And I would also like to do a land acknowledgement just to start out in a good way and acknowledge that I am presenting today from my home in the unceded traditional territories of the Stalo Nation. And I'd also just like to invite everybody to just take a moment to think about and acknowledge and think with gratitude about the different First Nations whose lands that you may be on. And since this is throughout BC, there could be a few people on treaty lands because we actually have a couple of treaties now. And I'd just like to thank all of the First Nations for taking care of these lands since time immemorial and allowing us to work, learn, and play and teach on these lands. So as Rachel said, we're here to talk about the pet emergency plan. This particular slide is the government form. But if you'll notice at the beginning, we said, what animals do you have? And if you'll notice at the first slide, there was a lot more animals than just the pets that are on this slide. So when we're talking today, we're primarily going to use the term animal, I think, for the most part, but just basically any animals that are dependent on humans. So it's not just the cats and dogs, it's also the horses and chickens, as well as the exotics and the other type of animals. And the first actual animal response in BC that was organized was in 1994. And then with the new act that we just passed in 2023, animals for the first time are included in the act, the new Emergency Disaster Management Act. So that's a good thing. And now we need to make sure that we give you the information you need. Now, many people, when they're thinking about planning, they think, oh, I don't live where there's wildfires, or I don't live where there's floods. And so they think I don't really have to prepare. Maybe I live in the Lower Mainland. Probably the earthquake won't happen. And there are a lot of wildfires and floods and mudslides and large scale disasters in British Columbia. And this is just a picture of Kelowna in 2023. But a lot of people don't think about the smaller disasters that are more likely perhaps to affect everybody regardless of where they live. So that would be something like an apartment fire or a house fire or maybe a smaller flood, or maybe it's a gas leak or something, anything that would cause you to have to evacuate or potentially shelter in place. So this is not just people that live in the interior where there's wildfires. It's everybody in BC. We all need to be prepared for whatever disasters may happen in our area. So the first thing, of course, everybody thinks disaster, evacuation. So the first thing is to make a plan. And when you're making your plan, it's very important not just to make one plan. It's not a one size fits all. You have to think about the different types of disasters that you have to plan for and what the different response from you would be for those disasters. And then you also have to think about, if not everybody's home, what happens. So if you've got a family of 4 and you've got 4 animals and everybody's responsible for one animal, but one person's not home, who takes care of that 4th animal? Those kinds of situations. You've got to make sure that you've got sufficient supplies. So when you're putting your grab and go kit together, it's really important to have leashes or crates, some form of containment or control for your animals. Because if you're in an evacuation situation, in a disaster situation, it's very fraught with stress and emotion, and your animals and yourselves, you won't act as you normally do. So you really need to make sure that you've got your cats and dogs and chickens and horses and whatever secured and contained. Obviously, special foods, pet ID, comforting items. If you've got an animal that's very attached to you, if you can get like small rags, washcloths, old bedding, and sleep with it, cut it into small pieces, and then put it into a Ziploc bag, a nice 8x10 Ziploc bag, put a bunch of little handkerchief-sized materials in there with your scent, then if your animal has to be away from you, that scent can be replenished every day. No, we don't want your favorite sweatshirt that you and your cat and dog all sleep on. Just something that will help your animal feel more closer to you, but that we don't need to worry about getting back to you. Then food, water, dishes, poop bags, litter boxes, always waste management, right? How are we going to deal with waste management? A pet first aid kit. Really, I say to people, your pet first aid kit can be your human first aid kit. You might just want to add a thermometer, because most of us don't want to share our thermometers with our pets, even though we love them. It's not something we want to do. And then the other piece that's really important is the out of area contact information. And it's really important that your out of area contact information is far enough away that if it's a large disaster, we will still be able to contact those people. So if you live in the Lower Mainland, you're going to go somewhere in the interior, maybe you're going to say London. Is it London, Ontario? Is it London, England? It doesn't matter. As long as it's far enough away that all the services will be working. And then the same with a copy of the emergency information. That's also a very important piece. And there's forms and information in the BC government booklets, and there's also information from CDART and the other groups in BC that do this work. Now, if you're unable to evacuate, then you must shelter in place. And shelter in place is, we all hear 72 hours, be ready for 72 hours. 72 hours is not long enough. If you're going to get ready for sheltering in place, you want to be at least a minimum of 2 weeks. If it's a large scale disaster, like the catastrophic earthquake, that it's not going to happen in my lifetime here in the Lower Mainland. But if it did, it's going to take about 72 hours for the governments to get up and running. And if you're not first on the list, there isn't anybody helping you in 72 hours. So you want to have sufficient supplies for yourself, your family, your pets for at least 2 weeks. And it's really important to get both any containers, especially with food, to be rodent proof, because as soon as you've got food, and if it's an earthquake, maybe you're not in your house, you're outside, they're going to smell it and they're going to come. Water, you need water for yourself, for drinking, for cleaning dishes, for cleaning each other. Food, medications. If you've got medications that need to be refrigerated, you've got to look at, getting coolers with little ice packs and stuff. And pet first aid kit, as I said before. And waste disposal is really big when you're outside. or if your own plumbing doesn't work, it becomes a lot more of a difficult thing. So where are you going to put that so it doesn't become a health hazard to yourself and your animals? And then the other piece that's really big for shelter in place is containment control. So if your house is not inhabitable, how are you going to keep your animals safe and with you? Now that's like a large scale, but what people don't think is if there's a mudslide and your roads are blocked, you can't get out of your house. Nobody can get in, nobody can get out. So it could be as simple as a mudslide or a flash flood or something that makes you have to shelter in place. Or as happened just recently, just where I live in Mission, there was a ferry that went up in flames and people were told to shelter in place in their homes because of the particulate matter in the air. So you just never know. And so you always want to be prepared with these items. And then the other concern as people with animals is what if you're not with your pets when the disaster happens? We can't be with them 24/7. So if you're not at home and they are at home, do you have those save your pet stickers on your house? Can you set up a buddy system with a neighbor? Now, bearing in mind, even with the buddy system with a neighbor, you might not nobody might be home. You never know, but you're trying to do the best that you can. And if you do set up that buddy system with a neighbor, make sure they've got access to your house. They know where your animals are going to hide. They know where the supplies are to evacuate your animals out with. If it's in your barn, where are your lead ropes? Do your horses always have their a harness or a bridle on? Like if it's your dog and your cat, do they have collars? Do they have crates? So all that information has to be known, and have a pre-planned meeting place, because if you can't get in touch with each other and your neighbor's got your animals and you can't phone them for whatever reason, do you have a place where you're going to meet? And it could be, oh, we're going to meet wherever the reception center is, because that should be publicized and you should be able to access that information. And in light of that, if your animals are at home, you should try and get to the ESS, the Emergency Support Services Reception Center, as soon as possible. And while you're registering, you need to be sure that they know that you have animals at home that need assistance and need to be evacuated or need food, whatever the situation is. So that's if they're at home and you're not. But what if they're at a service provider? So a lot of people, they have horses that they board regularly because where they live, they can't have a horse, but they can't have their horse. So their horse is at a boarding stable. Or maybe your dog's at a groomer's, or maybe your cat's at the vet, or maybe your chickens are at the vet. So if that's the case, the first thing you want to find out is whoever the service provider is, do they have a plan? And if if they do, what is their plan? Is it a good plan? But even with them, they need your out of area contact information. They need to know how to find you. If it's a large scale disaster, we will not have local communication, quite likely. So you won't be able to just phone up your vet and say, hey, here's where I am. Let's meet. So it's better if you have that all set up ahead of time. And if you do board your animals regularly, and again, it's usually going to be more urban people with horses, if you can keep all the animals' information right by their stall, so as they get evacuated out, all that information is there, that's going to be really helpful. And this is the emergency information that you want to have. So you don't have to have all of this, and you may have something that's not on this list. But the really important information for this is the out of area contact number. So anytime you have any ID that's associated with your animals, that needs to have your local number and also your out of area contact number. And it's really important to have permanent ID in the form of microchips or tattoos. But the best way to sometimes prove that an animal is yours is to have a photo. Have a photo of you with your animal. And especially if your animal has some unique markings like the animals in these pictures here. So, I mean, it actually works. So we were responding to an apartment fire, and there was a number of animals missing and a number of cats missing. So we were trapping in and around the apartment building that had been on fire. And we caught a cat, and it was black and white. And when we catch an animal, if it doesn't seem to match any animals that we have on our list, we won't necessarily just let it go because we don't know where it's from. So we will post, oh, we caught a black and white cat. So this was in Burnaby, and we got an email from a woman in New Westminster saying, I lost my cat because it was staying temporarily with family while we were moving. So that was in Vancouver, and we were moving in New West, and it got out and we never saw it. So we don't know if it might be, where it is. So I said, do you have any pictures? And this cat had very unique markings on its belly, and she had pictures, and it was her cat. So it might not even be an emergency necessarily. Like, her cat didn't suffer an emergency other than it escaped. It was trying to get from Vancouver to New Westminster, and it got as far as Burnaby, and we trapped it, and then we got to deliver it back so it could be back with its family and its dog and everything. So that was a really good news story. So it's not always a disaster oriented thing. ID is the best thing, and the best ID to have is a microchip. Tattoos are great. They're usually in the right ear, or if it's a breeder, they're quite often on their abdomen, but they can fade or be hard to see. And if you've ever tried to see a tattoo in a cat's ear, they don't usually want you to. And a lot of times dogs don't either. But microchips can be used for almost every species of animals. And we have universal microchip readers now. So it doesn't matter where the microchip came from, the reader will read the chip. Then we can call the chip company and say, look, we have this dog and it's traced back this number, and they'll give us your numbers, and we'll call the local number, and maybe it doesn't work. So we'll call the out of area number and we'll say, we have a black lab and it's come to this number, and they'll say, oh my God, that's Jasper. The family's really worried about it. And next time you phone your out of area contact number, then you can find out where we are with Jasper, your black lab, and come and get the dog or cat or horse or guinea pig, whatever it is, and bring it back with you wherever you're staying. Or if you're not able to do that, if you're not in a situation where you can have the animals back with you, then we can keep them in our shelter and take care of them for you. And that's part of why we ask for behavioral information and personality quirks in addition to medical and diet, because if an animal is with us for a longer period of time, we can take the time to get to know them better, and we'll try and keep them as comfortable as possible. Our number one priority, if animals are in our care as disaster responding agencies, is to keep them safe. But we do want to try and keep them as comfortable as possible while they're not with you. And as you can see, these animals have very distinct markings. So the reason I encourage microchips so much is it's great if you have an animal with distinct markings and you can take pictures of it. And when you do take pictures of your animal, take pictures of all angles. But what if you have a black cat or a black lab? Or what if you have, what am I trying to say here? Well, no, roans are usually different. I'm trying to think of a horse that stands. Horses usually have a little bit different. A buckskin horse, standard buckskin horse. Like, how do we know that's your buckskin horse? If you have a microchip, that's great. The microchip will be with the company. The microchip may be with your veterinarian. And you can also register your animals with their permanent ID with the BC Pet Registry. So in BC, we've got a pet registry. You can put all your contact information there, and it's another way for us to find you if your animals are found. And it's another way for you to try and find your animals if your animals are lost. It's another place for you to put that information. It's another way for us to reunite your animals. And you can see the stats there for that program. And it's actually run by the BCSPCA. But it is a pet registry, and it's very useful in the event of a disaster to help us find each other. And also helpful in the event of a disaster is the BC Premises ID program, identification program. So this is for hobby farms, or it could be for rescues that have farm animals. This is for farm animals. And what it does is it has pre-identifies you as a place that has farm animals, so that might need assistance hauling them out or might need hay. It's just another way of giving information to responders of what sort of animals are in the area. So your local authority, your municipality, your First Nation, regional district, whatever, they can use this information as well to find out what's in their area. So when they're doing their planning and that type of thing. So it's a very good thing to do. I know there's some people that don't want to do it, and that's fine. And you don't have to register for the premises ID or the BC Pet Registry or anything. It won't stop anybody from helping your animals. It's just another way of helping your animals. It's another form of support for you and your animals. So this is a big piece as animal people that we have to be aware of. If an alert is issued, you must be prepared to leave your home on short notice. So everything has to be ready to go. If you've got house pets, you need to bring them in the house. You don't leave your dog outside. You don't even let your dog outside to pee, because they'll go missing, because you're upset and they're upset and everybody's upset and strange noises are happening. Cats will hide where they've never hid before. You won't be able to capture your bird that's in its big giant cage. So you need to be ready to evacuate at a moment's notice, because when you're on alert, when the order comes down, they really want you gone like 5 minutes ago. So it's not the time to try and figure out where your cat is or to try and catch your bird. And the reason I say that is I know people who have had like pet birds and they have like walk-in cages where the birds can fly around it. So this is not the time. With your farm animals, you need to practice loading your animals, and you need to be able to load your animals, and you need to know where the trailer's coming from. And if you're relying on your neighbor is going to want to evacuate their animals first. So unless they've got a very large trailer that can fit every animal, you, as it says on the last piece, the second to last piece, if you can't get everything out in one trip, you need to start at the alert stage, because when the order comes down, you leave and then you don't get to come back. And the other piece that's really important that isn't always understood from the alert stage is if you're on the south side of town and you go to the grocery store on the north side of town and the south side of town goes under evacuation order, you don't get to go back home. And that happened in Fort McMurray to a number of people, and one specifically, a woman, she went, they had been on alert for quite a number of days, and once you're on alert for a number of days, you get a little bit, we're not going anywhere. And that happened in 2017 in 100 Mile House. We're not going anywhere. Oh, yes, we are. So it's important to know that when you leave, you should bring everything you need and you want, because you might not be able to go back and get it. And this particular woman, she went to help her granddaughter with her grandbabies because they got an order before she did. So she went to help them, not really understanding how things worked. And then when they were on their way, she went to go back home. And by that time, her home was under evacuation order and she was not allowed to go back. And she did not get her dog and cat. So it can be, that's an extreme sad story, and I'm sorry about the sad story, but I want people to understand, during an alert, it means an order could come at any time. And I mean, obviously you're not always going to get an alert. An order can come lickety split. You don't have a chance to do that type of thing. So if at any point you don't have all your animals out, make sure you come again to the ESS reception center. Make sure you tell the people at the reception center, we have animals, they're back at our place. We need to get them out, or whatever you decide you need to do. But the authorities need to know that, because they need to deploy the resources to help those animals. But if they don't know, then they won't do it. So that's the important thing. Yes, and always listen to the emergency officials for further information. And hopefully what should happen when the evacuation alert happens, and then when the order comes down, it should tell you, you go here and here's what's in place for your animals. Because quite often where the people go, the animals are not allowed. So you're going to want to drop your animals first at the temporary animal shelter and then go to the reception center. So again, plan, prepare, practice, make multiple plans for multiple scenarios with multiple different people, get all your stuff together, prepare, and practice it. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to load everybody up into your car and take off, but go through all the steps, but definitely practice putting your animals in crates if that's what it is. Practice moving your animals from their big cage, whatever, to the smaller one. Practice loading your livestock onto trailers. Many people, their animals get delivered in trailers and they never see another trailer until the flood's coming or the fire's burning. It's not a good time to start training your animals on how to get into the trailer because nobody's very calm at that point. And if you have fish, you can put them in plastic bags with water and get them out that way. So just in case you need to know that. So as I said earlier, there are 3 groups in British Columbia that do animal disaster response. CDART's been around since 2003. Pat Safe Coalition, they're up in the Caribou and Quesnel and Caribou Regional District. They've been around since 2014. And then Alert, which is in the central and south Okanagan down the Smilkameen, they've been around since 2017. So if you live in one of those areas where Alert or Pat Safe takes care of the animal situation, you can try for information and questions, you can contact them directly. You can also contact always your local government, be it your First Nation, your municipality, your regional district, and talk to their emergency management folks, their emergency program coordinators, and find out what the plans are for animals in your community. Make sure that it's a good plan. And then we're the 3rd one. We've been around since 2003. CDART, and we will go throughout the province if we have resources to do so. But it's really important to understand that all 3 of these groups, CDART, PetSafe, Alert, none of us will self-deploy. So that means if the government in charge of the evacuations don't ask for our assistance, we're not there. So that's why as residents and evacuees, you guys are the ones who have to say, hey, we've got animals, we need help. Please help us and get these people. And so that's sort of the presentation for today. General inquiries for us, if you could just, any of the groups, it's just the info email addresses, because, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we can provide training, we can help you do plans, we can do all sorts of things. If you have an animal and disaster issue that you're concerned about, just reach out to us and we'll help you out. And I'm going to pass it back to Rachel.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was awesome. Somebody wrote in the chat that you're a living legend. And I think that definitely stacks up. You have so much knowledge to share with the group. So thank you for joining us.